everybody? Welcome back to Source ADV. I'm Mark Jackson. I've got something behind my back here for this 2019 YZ250X that I'm very excited about, and it is a SmartCarb 2 38mm to make this puppy run perfectly. You know, I'm very regularly going from 5,000 feet up to 10,000 feet, so yeah, I have not been able to find a perfect sweet spot for this particular carb, so I'm really excited about this SmartCarb, and also excited to see how it runs and then go find somebody else that has a Lectron and see how they compare. So really pumped about it. The thing is just super impressive. Like, initial thoughts, like, right, it's like, it is such a cool looking carb. I hope it performs just as good as it looks. I read through the whole manual and talked to the representative there. It should be pretty straightforward, and it's going to come out of the box a little bit rich. So I'm just going to get it on there, get the thing running, test it up, and see what else it might need adjustments wise. At the end of the day, there's really not much you can adjust on it, which is awesome. You have a little clicker adjustment on the top here. So this guy right here, if the carb is if the throttle is totally open, you can adjust the clickers on the metering rod. You've got an idle screw adjustment here, and then you can actually switch the metering rod out. But overall, not a lot to change. Very simple, but very effective carb. So yeah, I'm gonna get this thing on there. One of the things to note is that this venturi right here has to be open in the air boot, so you gotta check your air boot and just make sure there's nothing blocking it. Do whatever you do to get the carb off for installation. This one's got the TPS sensor. It does not need the Keihin power jet connection that the Keihin has, so you can just wrap that up and tie it away. But excited to get this thing on and see how it runs and see how much better it works with the elevation shifts that we get here in Colorado. Subframe off so I can have really easy access to removing the carb and getting the new SmartCarb in there. I also want to pull the subframe so I can see the air boot and see if there's anything I need to trim to make a passageway for that venturi on the new carb. So let's do that. So looking at the SmartCarb, right, you can see that big venturi port on the top. Now, I mean, that cannot be restricted flow-wise. So sadly, with this YZ250, you can see here it's got this little lip here that I'm gonna have to just clean off a little bit. I'm gonna try to do it just with a really sharp X-Acto knife to start, and then if that doesn't work, I'll use a sand flapper wheel. I don't want to do the sand flapper wheel because it's gonna make a bunch of rubber shavings, and the X-Acto will probably be way cleaner. So let's try that out. There we go. I already carved a little notch out of the air boot for that venturi, but I'm just gonna clean it up with a flapper sand wheel on the Dremel, and then hit this whole thing pretty well with some contact cleaner. Make sure there's no crap in there that can get into the engine. Yeah, so that Dremel tool with the sandy flapper wheel does a really good job of making a very clean surface. As you can see here, that whole lip is just gone on the top there. Still plenty of lip to stop the carburetor from going into the air boot, but where the venturi is totally smooth now, so all the air will pass right by. So next up, you're going to want to disconnect these two connectors. One's the TPS sensor that you'll be reusing. The other one is for this Keihin power jet thing here that I still can't really get a real explanation on what it does online, but that one you're just going to tape up and leave in this boot here, and then we will be reconnecting the TPS sensor. So get that off, get your slide out on the other side, and get the carb off the bike. All right, now that both the carbs off, you can kind of do a side-by-side comparison. You can see the Keihin has a whole bunch of octopus tubes hanging off of it. The SmartCarb does not. It is a sealed unit, other than this little drain right here. That's literally just a screw-actuated float bowl drain. So that's it. Otherwise, it's a sealed unit, which is awesome. Really looking forward to not having gas on the floor when I tip the bike over or whatever. So yeah, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this cap off, the slide cap, and then get the slide and old return spring and this throttle cable off the old Keihin slide. All right, so as you can see, I got the old Keihin slide cap off and the throttle cable is fully exposed. Put everything back together in the Keihin carb, and just gonna put that away for a while. I've got the cap off the SmartCarb. You can see, man, it is such awesome construction. It is just this beautiful, you know, high quality billet aluminum product. So cool. Here's the SmartCarb slide. There's the metering rod, which is pretty crazy looking, right? That's where the throttle cable is going to go. It's got a little washer in there. And there's the little, can't really see it, but that's actually got a little hex head in it. That's the clicker adjustments for the metering rod. So when you bring the thing all the way up to full throttle, you can see that this little guy's got a little screw or a little like Allen that goes in there and then can adjust the clicker adjustments of the metering rod. So that's how you end up richening or leaning out your primary fuel mixture. Then you can switch the metering rod itself out too. But, you know, from what I've heard, you shouldn't need to do that. So that's awesome. So next thing, I'm going to get the throttle cable and slide together, and then it's time to put this puppy on. All right, so you're just going to thread the factory throttle cable into there, and you're going to need a very small 8mm wrench to get that little lock nut tightened down a little teeny bit. It doesn't have to be crazy, but you do want to make sure that it's nice and tight so it's not letting any air into the carb or anything weird like that. And there's a little washer that replaces the plastic throttle cable lock from the factory Keihin. It's very similar. There's just this little washer that drops down there and make sure the throttle cable doesn't move around. But yeah, you basically don't reuse any of the parts from the Keihin carb other than the throttle cable and that side of the TPS sensor connection. Everything else from throttle cable down is all going to be SmartCarb. So yeah, pretty cool. Crazy looking slide. All right, to get the SmartCarb into the bike, you're going to want to do it with the slide off, just like with the Keihin. It's easier to just have the slide off. You're going to want to kind of come in nice and low here, and then sneak the intake side of the carb just past the boot there, just about beyond the frame, and then kind of rotate it up into position, as it will not fit pretty much any other way. It won't fit through there, and it is definitely a little bit longer. So yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. So once you get it there, you can get it in the boot, get the slide on, and then it's time to check the clearance on the airbox boot on this little venturi port. All right, as you can see, I got the carb in place here. This front boot is all tightened down. Those little nubbins don't align with any notch like they do in the Keihin, so you just have to get the carb as vertical as you can. The only thing I'm noticing that might be a little bit of a limiter to that is that the throttle cable is kind of hitting the frame at the top here. So I'm just going to leave it right about there and crank this guy down a little bit more. But overall, it's looking really darn good. Just make sure that there's no obstructions in your slide. That you know, you've done a bunch of tests with the steering, with the handlebars, hard left, hard right. There's no, you know, friction in your throttle cables or anything like that. You just want to make sure that that's right. And then the last thing you got to do is just tighten up this TPS sensor. All right. One of the things I do want to note, I'm going to ask the guys at SmartCarb about, is that you can see there that that air boot is basically just touching the shock, and I'm hoping that it's not, because this one's, let's see if you can see it over here. I mean, it's not fully touching, but it's got, I don't know, it's touching in like 1 millimeter spot. So I'm not sure if that's a big deal or not. I rerouted that TPS sensor to stay out of the way here. You know, I'm just hoping that on some of the bikes, the power valve spacer is supposed to come out, and there's nothing about taking the power valve spacer out on this particular bike, but that would kind of help pull it a little bit closer to the engine and not have it touch that shock right there. So I don't know, I'll shoot them an email tonight and see what they say tomorrow. just kind of leave this as is for right now. All right, as you can see, the tank's back on the bike. Got the air filter back on. All the subframe bolts are torqued down. I ran into an issue with this Cheruby's tank here. The fuel line set up with this T is not long enough, so I got to grab some more fuel line too, and then reroute this fuel line. So that's fun. It's always something, right? But we'll get there. All right, so it's the morning after. I've talked to Nathan over at SmartCarb. He said not to really worry about that little contact patch, especially if, see, I'm tilting the bike over, the spring does not touch. I don't know if you can see it, you can't really see that. But once the bike has a little bit of weight on it, the spring does not even touch the air boot at all, so it's only at full extension that the spring touches the air boot. He said you can remove the power valve spacer if you want to, because the carb is 7 millimeters longer than a stock carb. You shouldn't see any performance decrease of any kind, because effectively the carb is creating the longer runner, so it kind of evens out with the power valve spacer removed. So cool. So I'm just gonna leave it on here for now, run it for like 10 hours, check the air boot, see how it runs. Maybe I'll pull it off just to see how it runs without the spacer. Give it a little bit more, the spacer adds more torque to the bike. So, and I've got some fuel line here and a little right angle fuel filter. Then I'm gonna see if I can get that guy to go right there, and that might be the perfect solution to have a little fuel filter right there. Yeah, it's right angle. It'll go right into this thing, and then I'll run a teeny bit of line right there, and we'll be good to go. So yeah, let's do it. All right, so my idea with the fuel filter is a no-go. This fuel filter, the way it flows, this end of the filter itself is way longer than this little elbow. So if it was the other way around, this thing might tuck in just right. But as you can see there, it just hangs out enough. Probably won't hit it with your boot. Like there's a little bit of clearance, but not as much as I would like. So I'll probably just find a little inline fuel filter for right here, and just pull this guy off and just do regular routing to this T for the Cheruby's tank, and call it a day. All right, so I think I've got at least a solution that's good enough for this weekend routed out. You can see I got this black Tygon line here that's way more flexible. It's really good. And then I just have this guy routed the way it goes. I found that if I put a little zip tie right here, I can add a little bit of pressure to this line and almost open it up a little bit more. But I'm definitely gonna reroute all of this stuff. I'm gonna try to find some little plastic 90-degree elbows for right here that can come perfectly. So I'll do 90 down, 90 over, right into this T perfectly, and then do another 90 into the carb, and that should give this a really perfect flow pattern. But yeah, so it's flowing, it's holding gas. So let's start her up. I'm gonna go ahead and lift the choke up. I've already done you have to lift the choke up on these carbs to fill the fuel bowl because it's totally sealed. So I've already filled the fuel bowl. It's usually got this little caution thing here on the choke. It's like a little tag, and it says you have to open the choke to fill the fuel bowl because the carb is totally sealed. Otherwise, the fuel bowl will not fill. But you also have to be aware that this could potentially flood the bike. So you don't want to leave the choke up for too long. But yeah, either way, let's start it up, see how she runs. Yeah, first kick, baby. Sounds great.
Nice.
All right, I took it for the inaugural spin around the neighborhood here. As you can see, I've got the wind-blown hair now. It feels freaking awesome. It just idles at nothing, basically, and it just seems to have a very linear a very linear power transmission from all the way from super low. It's really, really torquey at the bottom end, and it also kind of just revs right out. So I'm really curious to see what this is like on the trail, where it also, I mean, I got to think too that it's going to be cleaning itself out a little bit from the other carb. I might even just throw a new plug on it right now too and just see, just to kind of give it a fresh slate. But it looks great. You know, it looks great. It's, you know, it runs fantastic. It idles, starts first kick. So I'm really excited to see what this thing's like out on the trail. And the Cherubies here has 2 petcocks now, which is fun. So there we go. Let's get it out on the trail, see what happens, huh? Cool bike.